Calvin Castine, probably just in the right-hand corner or left-hand corner of your picture. And our main focus today is Mr. Robert Hebert, the school superintendent at Northeastern Clinton Central School. And about once a year, Mr. Hebert and I get together, and it's usually a budget time, but this year we're getting together actually in late December, but this will be shown in January. And we're here to talk about a proposed renovations project, a major capital project that'll be presented to the voters of Northeastern Clinton Central School on January 23rd, did you say, right?
January 23rd, that's correct.
So we're going to kind of go through the timeline of how we got to where we're at right now. There was a committee formed, and why was that committee formed, and what did you learn after that committee got together?
Well, in January, we had a long-range plan study done, which the district has to do every 5 years according to education law. And basically, we noticed that even though this had been done before, there were very few of those renovations that had been done. And therefore, we needed to look at our facilities in a serious manner. And we decided to form a facilities study committee. We started the committee around in July. We asked for volunteers, and we got some volunteers from all three townships, Moores, Champlain, and Rouse's Point. In addition to that, we asked some individuals who we felt would be really assets to the committee to take part on the committee. So when we had our committee formed, what we did is we started to visit every site in the district, and we found that there were a lot of things along the lines of maintenance repairs that needed to be looked at. After having looked at all the sites, we sat down and we started to project as to what we could do in order to renovate these buildings. And after we had met a few times, we decided to bring in the architects with some of the questions that we had that needed to be answered. So between July and October, we held public meetings which we reviewed various options. One of the options was to bring everybody here and attach it to this building. Another option was to bring both of the elementaries and put it on the Moores campus, which I think was one that was looked at previously. And then, of course, another option was to try to do renovations to our existing elementary schools and also the middle high school. So after reviewing a lot of these options and discussing them, the Facilities Committee made a recommendation to the Board of Education. And then the Board of Education started to review that recommendation, look at it, and at the December board meeting, the board passed a resolution to accept what we consider the renovation plan for the elementary in Rouse's Point, the elementary in Moores, and also renovations to the middle high school. There were modifications made to the original plan, and that was based upon cost factors that we had. And when we first started this project, the reason we were looking at doing it was because we knew, I worked with Maureen LeVar and extended the reorganization aid because it sunset in June of 2006, and working we were able to extend it for another 2 years, which meant that we could get as high as 95% state aid on the building project. But as we started going through it, it was very revealing because we found out that if you build with new construction, it sometimes costs more than what the state would allow. Therefore, there could be an increase of almost as much as like 9% for building materials. And we had to factor all that in. So the project that we are presenting, or that the board has agreed upon, will not be funded at the 95% because there are certain things that we had to look at, as well as the population of the students that we have in each building determines the amount of state aid that you get. So with all that in mind, and then one other factor that was very revealing is even though you would get, let's say, 95% state aid on your project, you would also have to pay the interest. And it's understood that you would get 95% of the interest. And as we looked into it further, we found out, okay, well, the state has a rate that they allow you to borrow at, which was like 3.87. So if you were to borrow the money at 5%, you would only get your state aid ratio on the 3.87. But we did get good news last week. The state has come up with a new rate, and their rate now is 4%. So it's a little reduction.
Do they tell you where to get the loan at 4%?
No, unfortunately, and we were hoping that, that you can get it at 4, but you don't know. We don't, when you borrow, we have no guarantees as to what that will be. But all these things become more and more revealing, and I think it's very important that we're able to communicate all this to our residents and taxpayers, because we want them to be totally informed before they decide whether they want to support this or not.
Okay, let's just quickly run through what we're not going to do. Originally, as I recall, the facilities committee came up with, I think there were 4. There was a 2A or 2B.
Yes.
There was actually 4. Then a 5th one came into play because several of the citizens said, well, how come you didn't look at Champlain Elementary?
That's correct. And the board was very receptive to that, and there was also a petition that was submitted from the residents of Champlain, which the board looked at seriously. And then they came up with another option, and we looked at the possibility of opening Champlain as a 1 deep and Rouse's Point as a 1 deep. What I mean by 1 deep would mean 1 class per grade level. The reason that you have to do that is you also have to have a study done for the enrollment. There has to be an enrollment projection study, and that was part of the committee's work also. We had an enrollment projection done. The district or the board passed the resolution to do that. The study cost approximately $1,900, but you can't go ahead with a project unless you have it. And what that does is that shows what would your enrollment projection be in the next 10 years or 5 years. And the results of that was a decline of approximately 11%. So you can only go with the population that you would have at the time that your building would be constructed. So there's no way that we could go more than 1 deep and 1 deep and then the 3 deep at Moores. So you can't add another section just because you would like to have the extra classrooms, because you will not get aided on it. So
Okay. The 11% decline, that's in 5 years?
it's in 10 years. It's a projection. It's just a projection, which you have to have.
Well, it's kind of hard to project beyond 5 years because 5 years is the kindergarten class.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you go beyond that because those kids aren't even here yet, aren't even conceived?
Well, one thing that they do when they do that, and it's basically done, it's more of a demographic study, but they also look at the birth rates in your area, and they do projections, and it was done by someone out of Syracuse that we contacted to do that. So, but you have to have it. The state requires that you have an enrollment projection before you can go ahead. And that's basically what they'll do. They'll look at their death rates, they look at the birth rates, and then they make their projections based upon your current enrollment. So once the board approved the project or passed a resolution to move forward with the project, we had an additional board meeting on the 20th where we had an opportunity, even though all the different renovations were put in place as part of the cost, we wanted to really take a look at each of these renovations that was being recommended in each of the buildings, and to be able to explain why, and basically if there was any of these recommendations that we might be able to hold off on, or maybe look at an alternate for.
Okay, I'm going to
Right.
hope you don't mind. 'Cause
No,
I'm
not
gonna
at all,
interrupt
please.
you quite often, because I'm sure people watching this are saying, well, why doesn't he ask this, why doesn't he ask that? And I'm trying to anticipate these.
Mhm.
And one obvious question that comes to my mind is, if we're going to have an 11% decline, why do we need to expand some of these elementary schools?
Well, we really are not expanding the elementary schools. If you look at the proposal, we're not expanding the elementary schools at all. What we're doing is we're renovating the existing buildings that we have. We are adding on to the Rouse's Point because Rouse's Point at this time does not have any special education classes, and the unfortunate part is those students who do reside in the Rouse's Point district have to be transported to Moores. So that's the reason we're adding two classrooms there, so you would have one at the primary level, one at the intermediate level. And then the other thing that the committee really wanted to do more than anything else was to take the classrooms out of the basement. In Rouse's Point, you currently have 2 kindergarten classrooms in the basement, so you would be adding 2 classrooms so that those classes could be removed out of the basement. In Moores, since you would be maybe taking 1 or 2 of the classrooms and for the special needs and sending them to Rouse's Point, you would be able to create some space, and then also the special areas would be moving down into the basement, such as music and art, and that would give us the extra space that we need to bring the classrooms down there upstairs. So we're really not adding anything to the schools. We're just trying to achieve a goal of taking our students out of the basement.
So you're taking the kids out of the basement, and currently you're saying that Rouse's Point special ed kids end up in Moores, so
We would
there will be an expansion there because you're creating 2 new classrooms for
for
the
the
special ed.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, and I'll probably mention this more than once, but after Mr. Hebert and I get done talking, I'm going to turn it over to him again by himself, and he'll be showing us this on some of the sketches that they have here, so you can see it visually what we're talking about right now.
And also, in order to inform all our residents, we used to have the newsletter, but we had to cut that out of our budget last year. But we did do a special, what we call special edition for the building project, which everyone should be receiving. And this will also outline the budget, the finding, the renovations, all of the information we're going to talk about today will be in this particular newsletter that you will be receiving. We also have 2 information meetings scheduled. January 9th will be at 6:30 in Rouse's Point Elementary. January 11th is going to be at 6:30 in Moores. And we also, for the first time, will be having what we call an information fair. My hopes with this fair is to allow a very relaxed atmosphere where people will be able to come in, ask questions, or at least mill around to the various booths or tables that'll be there. There'll be one with our financial consultant. Munistat has agreed to come. Collins and Scoville will be there, the architects. WPS, the engineers, will be there. We'll also have the sketches of the proposed renovations for all the buildings. I asked Mr. Menard if he would mind being at one of the tables, and he will be there. So if anyone has any questions regarding the repairs and the maintenance of the facility, they'll have an opportunity to do that. And it'll be just an opportunity for people to walk around, look at information, pick up some information. If they don't want to ask the questions, they may be able to just stand there. Somebody else will ask the questions, and hopefully they'll get the answers they need, because we really want people to understand, before they actually vote on this. And I guess one other thing that I need to make clear, when we look at the financial impact that this will have, it's understood that even though it's not going to be a significant impact, that there will still be a regular school budget every year. I just want to make sure that people understand that even though this may be a fixed rate, that the school budget is on top of that.
Over and above this. So let's get to that bottom line, if you would.
Okay.
What do you have a cost on what the proposed project is going to?
Well,
Little Bates?
I do, in the sense that what we did is we tried to run the figures, and looking at the existing debt that we have now, and we know that over the next 6 years, this debt will basically go down. And then when you start with your first ban, you take out some money, and then you can reinvest that money so that while you're waiting for the project to begin, while you're going out to get the bids, et cetera, then you will be making interest on that money. By putting all that into play with the new rate, and I have to say that when you read it through here, it'll probably say 34 cents a thousand, but with the new rate now that we're going to get the 4% versus the 3.87, you're looking at about 30 cents a thousand increase. So on a $100,000 home, it would be about $30 a year. And that's the average. That doesn't mean that's going to be every year. There'll be some years that'll be higher, some years that'll be lower, and we'll try to maintain that amount of money.
Well, what is the amount of the capital project that you're looking at?
The capital project itself is $22,500,000, and we are going to try to reduce that by using Excel aid, which we were given last year. Most school districts for the first time were given Excel aid that could be used for projects, and our Excel aid is around $523,000. So that's why, even though the project is $22,500,000, the way the resolution reads is that, we will bond about $22 million.
I'm sure most people listening to this have no idea what Excel aid any more than I do.
Okay.
What is Excel aid?
Excel aid is an aid that was given to us or allotted to the school districts this year for building projects that schools might have had to undergo. It could be used for technology, it can be used for various things, and it is to be tied into a capital project. And different districts received different amounts. Some districts received $1 million, some received more, but our allotment was $523,000.
Now, we received it, or just sitting there in Albany?
It's sitting
with our
there,
name,
yeah.
with our name on
Right.
it?
It's just like your state aid. And this has to be, you can't just say we're going to use it. You actually have to have a project. If not, if you don't use it, then you could very well lose it in 2 years. And it's not guaranteed that it's going to come back again. I don't know. It could have been, it was an election year last year, and that could have been a one-time thing, but we don't know.
So this is money that would come quickly once we started this project, if we
Well,
start this
the
project.
point is, most of the school districts are trying to use their Excel aid, but you would be able to get it because it's supposed to be earmarked for us. We might not get it right in the beginning, but we would probably get it before the end of the project.
Okay. All right, so,
I think what I would like to do next, it's up, unless you have something else, is
Go
to
ahead.
probably go through with some of the renovations that have been identified for each of the buildings, so people will have an idea of what that money would be used for.
okay, again, we will be going over to the drawings shortly, but just in case once we do that, I'll be behind the camera and won't be available to ask too many questions, so we're going to run through it with just us sitting here, and then Mr. Hebert will go over to the drawings and re-emphasize it again and actually point on there exactly what is happening where.
Okay. These are the specifics. When we look at the scale drawings, I will be able to show you the different locations of what will take place. But one of the things, we'll start with the Rouses Point School. We're going to replace the carpeting is down. Basically, it would be all the carpeting in Rouses Point. It has not been done for quite a while. At our last meeting, we asked whether we could use tile as well in the hallways rather than the carpeting, and we were told that it's just about the same price, so that might be something that we would consider, because maintenance-wise, and I would say health and safety-wise, tile is probably easier to maintain, or as far as the dust and cleaning. The accessible bathrooms, we will make sure that there are bathrooms that are handicapped accessible according to the ADA on the the first floor, and then also probably do go through all the bathrooms and, you know, refurbish them a little. But there needs to be 2 bathrooms that are handicapped accessible. Then the other thing, that as far as accessibility goes in Rouse's Point, there is no elevator to go from one floor to the other. We would be looking at putting in an elevator that would go all the way down to the basement. And the main thing that we are looking at in all of the schools, so even though I may talk about it in Rouse's Point, it really applies to the middle school, also applies to Moore's, and that is taking a look at the heating and ventilation system. Right now, we have very little ventilation in any of those 3 facilities. There are very little fresh air that is brought in, and that needs to be redone over again. It was back 10, 15 years ago, for instance, when you put the new windows in, back then what we tried to do is seal everything up because we were trying to be energy efficient, and it wasn't a major issue as far as providing fresh air, but now that has become a major issue. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. The other thing that definitely needs to be updated is the fire alarm systems in all the facilities, so that would be one of the things that we'd be looking at. We need to replace the roof in Rouse's Point. The roofs, all 3 of the roofs date back to about 1983. The one in Rouse's Point really has leaks now. And then we need to replace some of the masonry, needs to be pointed up. In addition to that, all the buildings will have a new phone system. Our phone system is definitely not up to code as what it should be. We don't have phones in all of the rooms, not phones to call out people, but in case there's an emergency or in case someone needs to call someone or a parent needs to get a hold of a student. So that phone system now, with the new technology we have, would be replacing the whole phone system. So, and that's important. And also the clock system, so that all the clocks in the school would be synchronized in all the schools.
Now, you mentioned 83 for the roofs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the roof here was done after that.
I think the one in the high school, but that's why I said I think the 3 roofs, the middle school, Rouse Point, and Moore's. Then you have to do some plumbing and hot water heat because apparently the pipes are all galvanized in between the walls, and there's been some difficulty there. And what we would want to do is we would want to, you know, go through that whole system. And then we would have to renovate the basement because even though we're going to take the classrooms out in Rouse's Point, we have a low ceiling and the windows are very small. So what they would be doing some landscaping towards the back, pulling out, making the windows, putting larger windows in to provide more light. So for the art room and the library, when the students went down there, those rooms would be, you know, better ventilated and also have more light.
And I think for safety, having a window you can get out of
yes,
is
very important.
Very, very, very important. That you can't put a price tag on something like that. And you did tell me before we started running that there has been water problem in the basement in Rouse's Point.
That's correct. We had a problem there this summer with mildew. We had to have an emergency project to remediate that, and we are still in the process. We were going to put the I guess the remediation part where they will be digging up along the foundation and fixing it as part of the project, but since we had already started it as an emergency project, we did get approval to continue with the remediation, so we were able to back that amount of money out of this project that we're looking at now. There will also have to be some, the addition in Rouse's Point that we had talked about, which would be the 2 special ed classrooms and the 2 regular ed classrooms, which would go at the end of the building. So now you would have some site work, which you'd probably have to move that playground, as well as, you know, taking the land away from to put larger windows around the foundation of the school.
So that's expanding on the south side, pushing the building closer to Route 11, the Champlain Street area.
Right.
Going in that direction. Actually, as I'm sitting here looking at it, it'd be going in that
Right,
direction.
you'd be in that direction, but we're talking Rouse's Point, right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So that's what we're looking at for Rouse's Point. Moores, we would be replacing the carpeting on the second floor, in the hallways, and in the auditorium. That needs to really be done, that carpet in the auditorium. I don't know when that was last replaced, but that's one of the things that they would look at. Again, also the heating and ventilation and new emergency lighting. That means that we have to have emergency lights almost everywhere now. So in case the power goes out, you have to have the backups. We'd have to have accessible bathrooms, again, according to ADA. We'd have to have 2 of those downstairs. And the other thing that we do not have in Moores right now is we have to provide accessibility to that stage. So you would probably put in a small lift, so if a student needed to get on the stage to perform or whatever, then they would have an opportunity to do that. And one of the problems that's plagued us in Moores for a while is the septic system. So you'd be looking at an upgrade in that septic system. I'm not quite sure exactly how they would do it, but right now, when it gets cold, we have to have salamanders out there to provide heat. I think what they would be looking at is providing heat to that septic system, as well as insulating the roof, because right now it's just like corrugated plastic. There's no insulation. So there would be definite work done on that, because that's a major part of that facility. We'd have to have the new fire alarm systems also. And we'd be looking at replacing that roof also, because that's also one that's been there for quite a while. And one of the big costs at Moores, because of the beautiful dental work that was done, is now the mortar is starting to crumble and fall. We would have to go and do a lot of pointing. In addition to that, when there were leaks, there was a lot of caulk that was put in there to try to stop that. Those were stopgap measures. That would all have to come out, and that would all have to be repaired, because that's how the water was getting in and creating problems. So we'd be looking at doing that. The entrance stair at Moores, if you even step and you try to open the door, you have to step off the step, because somehow the door is wider than the step and you can't go in, but it's also cracked. So they would be looking at, they would have to repair those front steps in Moores. That was one of the things that was identified. And also the telephone system, the clock system, and replacing the plumbing and hot water also in some of the lighting. So now the middle high school, we would be replacing the carpeting in the, I believe it's in the 6th grades, and there's some because in the classroom it's torn, not just stained, but also there's places where it's a tripping hazard. So that's what they would be looking at. Also, the heating and ventilation in the middle school. We also need to do the emergency lighting. The high school gym bleachers, we were just talking about that. Those would be replaced. The middle school gym bleachers need to be replaced.
And just a point on those high school bleachers, if you've never had the pleasure of trying to walk up and down them, whether this, as I was telling Mr. Hebert before we came on camera, whether this project goes through or not, those bleachers have got to be replaced. They are a safety hazard, and when I'm up there taping and I see elderly people and even younger people step on a bleacher and it gives away like this, the front part stays there because it's got something holding it up, but the bottom part, about closer to where your feet would be if you were sitting there, gives way. And if you're stepping on it sideways, you could very easily twist your ankle, and people could lose their balance there. So it's something that I'm just hoping we can get through this winter sports season without an injury there.
Okay, in addition to that, and I said new fire alarm systems, but the sidewalk is really in need of repair in the front of the building.
Up front here over.
Yeah, sidewalk's been there for a long time, and I think if most people look at it, they can see it's separating from the curb, and it's cracked, and every year we try to patch it, but it's almost to the point where it's beyond patching.
And I might suggest if you do put in that sidewalk, look to where people are walking now and expand it to there, because there's no sense trying to grow grass where
Right.
people are cutting across.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
so move the sidewalk to where the people walk.
Okay. And then the other thing that a lot of people have always been asking to have done, because it is dangerous, is redesigning the parking and traffic flow. I will be able to show you when we look at the diagrams, but we're looking at creating a separate drop-off point for parents that is not tied into the bus circle. Because every time that the buses come in, then people are blocked from going in that direction, and it creates a problem if people try to go on the other side of the buses when they shouldn't. But that's one of the things that we're looking at.
And when you see that drawing, Mr. Hebert hasn't convinced me yet that it's the only option, but the faculty, which is parking in back of the school here at the middle high school, would end up going out on Prospect Hill Road. And if you've ever driven down that road, there's right at the top of a hill there. And I'm not convinced that sending a lot of traffic out in that area is in anybody's best interest. But that's something that will be looked at.
Right, that's right. These are, especially when it comes to the traffic flow, they are preliminary drawings, and I think the more input that we get from people who have experienced difficulties, and we will be, if should the referendum go through, the architects will be, meeting with a lot of people to make sure that they have what is considered the safest and the best way. So the middle school roof and the high school roof really need to be replaced. And maybe the high school roof is not quite as old as the others, but you would not, should the project go through, you wouldn't want to have to come back in 5 years and say, now we need to replace that roof. So it would probably be, and plus the fact, since the middle school does receive the 95% state aid funding, it seems like it's very logical to replace that roof at the same time. Repair masonry and metal siding at the high school. And then again, the new phone system, the clock system, the classroom lighting in the middle school needs to be looked at. We need to remove one of the middle school oil tanks. We removed one before that was in. I think we have one left. That's a single wall that needs to be removed. Upgrade the temperature control software and the pool itself, because there is very little ventilation underneath. If you were to look underneath that pool itself, you could see where the humidity and the moisture, it creates a problem. So there has to be a new ventilation unit put into that pool. And then variable speed drives, replace the windows in curtain wall in the middle school.
What do you mean speed drive?
Well, it's the volume of the air that's being sent through the ductwork. So if you can do that, right now the units don't have variable speed drives, and it's sent in that maximum velocity. So if you put those variable speed drives in, you can kind of slow it down, and I think it'll be much more efficient.
Okay, that's air circulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then install natural gas piping, because then should the natural gas, because some of our boilers can go both ways, should the natural gas become or continue to be less expensive, then we would be able to tie in and use natural gas as well. And it's more efficient too in many ways.
Would it be flexible? You could use one or the other?
Right, and that's what we want to do. So what we would do is we would have to bring the piping in. So, and then you would convert the high school and middle school burners to gas and oil. Some already are, but anything that isn't, you would do that. Replace the sewage pump system pumps. They haven't been done in a long time. This year, as a matter of fact, we were very fortunate that Jim Menard was able to get down. Otherwise, I almost had to close school because one of the pumps broke down, but he was able to get a part, get down there, repair the pump. But they have been there for a long time, and we need to make sure that those don't break down on us. Plumbing for the domestic hot water upgrades, basically the same as in the other school. We're looking at possibly renovating the middle school office area, the guidance area, and maybe the district offices in the high school. Because of the increased demand on security and safety, it's necessary now that we really take a look at, if we're going to do any kind of renovation, putting our offices right next to the entranceway so that we do have visibility as to who comes into the building. Because in many of the cases, somebody can walk right in the building and you don't even know who's there. So that's just one way of trying to increase security. We did have, a possibility of providing air conditioning in the middle school, but it wouldn't be necessarily air conditioning throughout the building. But like if we have a computer lab down there, we might want to drop a unit down. So we would have that, and maybe in some offices now, people are here
the
12 months a year.
Superintendent's office,
Well,
and he's here in July. Well,
yeah.
you're here in July.
Well, you're
We want to get peak efficiency out
right,
of you.
right. And then the other would be to try to bring the home and careers into the middle school, because that is a middle school program, and right now it's located into the high school. So we would hope that we would be able to do that. And then the other area that we're looking at doing is, since we're going to be doing we would have to do a small addition onto the bus garage to get the tractors and the trucks out of the actual building, is we would take that maintenance area that we now use for that and put in 2 science labs. By putting in those 2 science labs, then our middle school students would not have to walk all the way down to the high school and go up. And it's not that that's a problem, even as far as, because our students are wonderful, but it's a long ways. And it's time consuming out of their day too, to go back and forth, and it creates a little bit of anxiety sometimes with students. And again, as I was talking about for the bus facility, we'd be looking at fixing the existing roof leaks and probably putting in some adequate insulation to try to, conserve energy there, excuse me. And then there would be one of the bays that would be used to store the tractors and the trucks from the maintenance. So those, I know there's a lot there, and those are listed in your newsletter that you will be receiving, and you can take a look at those. And if you have any questions regarding those, and you come to one of the public meetings, either on the 9th, the 11th, or the 16th, your questions will be answered. And if you feel that you want to give me a call at any time, and if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer those for you too. And if I can't, then I would refer you to the architect or whatever.
Now, obviously, you're proceeding with the hope that this will be passed, and the board probably hasn't given too much thought to what would happen if it doesn't come through, or is that something you don't really want to talk about?
Well,
you've listed here probably
right.
There's got to be 30 or 40 different items. Has the board prioritized any of those? I mean, things like I said, like the bleachers. To me, that's, and you talk about the sidewalks.
Yeah.
There's things that just have to be done, otherwise.
The roof in Rouse's Point.
The roof, if the roof is leaking,
Yep.
Everybody knows from their own home, the roof leaks, you better get it fixed, otherwise your whole house is going to fall apart. So there's things that have to be done, and there's things that could be.
We've been fortunate in many ways. I mean, we've had, some difficulties because these buildings are not new. We are entitled to $100,000 project each year, and that's how we've been doing, like replacing our hot water tanks, replacing our boilers, fixing up various things. But we've also had several emergency projects, but you can't have an emergency project every time something goes wrong. That's why the state makes us have this 5 years long-term planning. And so we will need to address some of these issues. I can't project what the board would do, but I know that some of these things will have to be done. As to how we're going to, finance these things, I'm not sure. But I guess right now I would rather take the first step and see what happens. I think people realize that there are things that need to be done, and the reason that we're trying to get it done now is because of the maximum state aid that we can get for this. One of the things that I did do in here is to try to break down for you the different state aid percents that you would be able to get. Most of or I should say, a lot of the renovations that are going to take place will be at the middle school, but because of the high population that we have at the middle high school, all that will be 95% aidable. So that's why some of those things are in there that may not, well, they may not be absolute necessities, but when you can get 95% aid, you try to do what you can. At the Moores Elementary, we're looking at about 75% state aidable. And when you look at Rouse's Point, that's addition, that's going to be about 70%. And then the renovations in Rouse's Point are at about 75%. And if you look at the percentage of the total project, the middle high school is about 56% of that project. The Rouse's Point renovation is about 11%, and the Rouse's Point addition is 7%, and the Moores renovation is about 25%, and the transportation facility, which is also, that we talked about putting that little addition on, is 1%, but that's also at 95% state aid. So looking at that, the total cost of the project itself is $22,485,000. And we have $523,631 of Excel aid that we can use. So we would have to bond $21,961,369. And the state aid, and this is not figured on a percentage because it's all, there's other factors that come in for this project, would be $19,304,500. So the local share for the project would be $2,656,869. So that's why when you're looking at over the 15 years of the project, what you're actually doing is you're bonding the money at a fixed rate, and so that's why we were able to calculate with the decreasing debt limit until that goes away in the first 6 years or so, that you'd be looking around 30 cents a thousand.
So the overall state aid would be in the upper
Well,
upper 80%?
86%. So what you would do is you take a combination of all those state aid ratios that I just gave you, and then it comes out to about 86%, which is pretty good.
Okay. So I guess we're ready for looking at the charts?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll do that.
This is the sketch of what the Rouse's Point Elementary School would be like. Basically, we have the first floor plan here, which is similar to what it is right now with those renovations that we talked about. And we have a small addition here where we would have 2 classrooms. And then if you look at the second floor, you can see that the 2 other classrooms that we had talked about, the special ed, it doesn't mean that these will both be special ed, but that would be determined at a later time. But you would have the 4 classrooms in this new addition. And this is also in the newsletter that you will be receiving. But what this does, by putting these 2 classrooms here, it takes out the 2 kindergarten classrooms that we currently have in Rouse's Point. Then the basement, and there will be an elevator that would go all the way down. In the basement you would have the library, where it is now. You would have the art room and the music OT-PT room. And this is where the landscaping would take place so that we could put in larger windows so you would have more light coming in, and these rooms would then be usable by all the students in the Rouse's Point Elementary. At Moores, we basically would be keeping the same structure, not adding on any new additions, but since we would be removing a couple of our special ed classrooms to Rouse's Point, we would then be creating more space for those classrooms that are downstairs in the basement. In addition, we would be looking at putting in the art room and the music room in the basement. What that would do is that it would take out those 2 classrooms that are currently in the basement, and it would give our students an opportunity to be out of the basement, and they would only have to go down maybe once or twice a week, just as in the Rouse's Point School, to attend those classes. The ceilings in the Moores basement are much higher than they are in Rouse's Point. And this would be the second floor plan. So there really is no new addition. It's just basically renovations. All of those different renovations that we talked about, the new ventilation system, the fire alarms, the telephone, the clocks, all of that would be taking place there. And if you look in the cafetorium, this is where the new carpeting would be. And then also in the hallway on this, the second floor. And then the middle high school, one of the things that's really important, or was very important to the committee as they went through this process, and we did have a lot of discussions about all the facilities. I can't say enough of that facilities committee. They worked very, very well together. They gave up a lot of time, and recommendations and suggestions were excellent, and that's the reason why we have, I think, a good plan to present to our residents. Is the new bus loop that would be separated from the parent drop-off. We would be looking at different types of parking, and this is what Calvin referred to when in the preliminary drawings for the exits from the back parking lot was to go across the field and exit off on Prospect Street. But again, depending on where it comes out and what needs to be done to ensure safety, or whether there needs to be a different route. But that is preliminary. The main thing is that we are looking at a different way, different means of egress from the middle high school, so that there will not be as much confusion as there is presently. The area here is where currently we have the maintenance facility. That's where we would be putting in our new science labs for the 7th and 8th grade. And over here is where we would these 3 art rooms that we have are really huge, so we would actually be breaking them up, and there's enough space in there to create a home and careers room, and that would also be for the middle school. So the middle school students would really be staying more into the middle school area. They would be here for science, they would be here for home and careers, they have their own cafeteria, they have their own gymnasium. So, and in addition to that, we would be looking at, renovating the bathrooms in the high school. We need to do some ventilation for the swimming pool. That one hallway that has been turned into a storage area would once again be back functionally used as a hallway. And then we would be looking at, some of the other spaces. These diagrams are in your newsletter that you will be receiving. And again, you must remember that they are basically preliminary diagrams, and that we will be looking at revisiting them to try to make as many modifications as we possibly can to have the best facilities designed to meet the needs of all our students should the referendum go through. So I guess once again what I would like to do is I would like to remind everybody of the meetings that we are going to have January 9th in Rouse's Point at 6:30 p.m., January 11th in Moores at 6:30, and also the middle school gym from 6 to 8 o'clock, the information fair on the 16th. And I encourage everyone to please come and listen to the presentation and ask any questions that you might have. And if you cannot attend the information meetings, please feel free to come to the fair. Just stop in for 5-10 minutes, whatever. And if you have any questions or you want to pick up some information, this will be a perfect opportunity to do it. And then I also encourage everyone to please come out and vote on the 23rd. Thank you.
I've never got that.
Tierney tries to clear it. Cats bring it right back in. Shot by Rabideau.
Walking away from you.
Trudeau will take the throw. Cougar's able to clear it. Kick by Supley. Kelsey sends it over to 18 Gardner. Amanda Rabideau back for it. About 16 to go. Rabideau, Honan gets a foot on it. Kicked out by Gardner. Darcy Rabideau didn't like that call. I'm surprised with the way it went too. There's Trudeau. Minutes remaining in the second half. 1-0 Bobcats. Parker's Chevrolet championship game. Van Leuven with the ball. Brunel will throw it back. Kept in play by Scott. Now Rior sends it down. Rabideau catches up with it in the corner. Trudeau. Corner kick. Out in the air. Curveball. Out in the air. It doesn't have to be on the ground. That's where the ball is. 13 and a half to go in the second half. Supley gives to Lajway. Gets a little bump from Forey. Rior carries it. Poirier steps up, steals it. Push called on Gardner. Here's Colleen Honan. Rabideau brings it up, sends it through. Up for Scott. Tierney with the goal kick. Corrier sends it down the field. Kicked out by Hicks. We have subs coming in. Corrier, Johnny Ray Corrier in to Van Leuven.
No, they sub.
Brunel will take the throw. Have to bring it back a couple steps. Sent by Filion. Honan to Corrier. Kicked out of bounds by Saskavich. Van Leuven on the wing. She got Supleyed. Doesn't look like Kayla Supley to me. But that's what the number says here. Corner kick. Maybe when I see her on a big TV set, it'll look like her, but from up here, it doesn't look like Supley. Siskavich taken down by Courier. I don't know. I haven't seen Supley since softball season, so who knows? Calling her Soup, so Supley takes it away. Trudeau sends it up. Looking for Siskavich, but Honan takes it. 9:06 to go in the second half. Trudeau with the throw. Kearney will take the goal kick. 8:15 remaining in the half. Amanda Rabideau will take this toss. A little elbow there by Courier. There's Johnny Ray Courier. Under 8 to go. Rachel Courier carries it in, shoots, sends it wide. There's passing instead of shooting. But it didn't work out. Lajway back in. She's taking a pounding. Green kick. It's Reed taking it. Not quite sure what the holdup was. Less than 7 to go in the half. Reed takes it away. Forey will toss it in. And Forey heads it. There's Filion. Light throw. Kyle goes against the Cats. Big white kick. Honan puts it in play. Cougars would like to tie this one up and send it into overtime. And this is a tournament game, so you have to have a, well, theoretically you have to have a winner. So whether we stay for all the shootouts and all that stuff, if they can't decide in regulation, we could be here all night. Just missed it. Oh, Courier spun around by Brunel.
Get up there, John. Gotta get everybody up there.
Honan will take it. Opportunity here for the Cougars. This is a good spot. Courier catches up with it. It was headed for the side of the net. Taken away behind the post by Brunel. 4 minutes to go in the second half. Rabideau sends it back.
Onan gets there. There's Forey. Let's see, 7. That's Barron. Push from behind. Reed calling for the push. There's Honan. Kicks it up to the 18-yard line. Hicks will try to clear it. Less than 3 to go in the second half. Cougar's looking to tie it and keep us here all night. Ball at the 18.